Hey, Star Wars fans, what is up? Now, before we start off the video, I kind of want to give you a heads up. I do have a Facebook page up, or I've had one up for a little while. I just haven't had time to mention it. Facebook.com/DarthKittens77. Now, the other day I did post a schedule that I'm going to try to stick to help me kind of prioritize between me not trying to have enough time to edit my videos and add in the audio. One day is not enough. So hopefully this will keep me on schedule. Now today is Vehicle Saturday, as I like to call it, where I'm going to talk about one specific vehicle within the Star Wars Battlefront. And today is the notorious AT-AT. Now kicking this off, I'm going to talk about the pilot of the AT-AT, or the Imperial Walker, as some of you may know. Now of course AT-AT stands for All-Terrain Armored Transport, for some of you who did not know. So only the strongest Imperial soldiers are put forward to training to become pilots of the terrifying all-terrain armored transport. Because it's so massive and there's so many controls you have to take into account, there has to be two pilots controlling this. You may notice in Battlefront that you can't control it all by yourself, but without that co-pilot, you're kind of missing out on a lot of extra firepower that you could have. So the pilots sit in the cockpit, which you kind of see as I zoomed in. You don't get to see the entire cockpit, but you especially get to see it in the Star Wars movies. Now the cockpit is at the AT-AT's head, as you may recognize it, and the AT-AT pilots are operating, driving, and firing the controls. So it takes two people to run it and fire it. It's not a job for one person. So the AT-AT walkers march relentlessly across uneven ground, as proven in the Battle of Hoth, using their mighty laser cannons to create destruction and terror. It's crazy how much destruction you can have with these. One thing I want to point out in this Star Wars Battlefront, at least, is the pilot has a stronger firepower, yet cannot fire as much as the co-pilot. So you kind of have to decide in between one of those two. Now, fun fact, the AT-ATs are not climate controlled, so pilots have to wear a special insulated jumpsuit at times. I mean, this one, especially in the Battle of Hoth, is very insulated for the frozen planet, such as Hoth. The suit protects the pilot in case the head is smashed open and he's thrown out into the harsh environment. So they have the reinforced helmets in case they are shot down, life support packs. They have their driving gauntlets, which help, one, keep their fingers warm, and two, keep their hands on the controls. And then depending on which environment they're at, they can have a special insulated jumpsuit. Now, I think it was really amazing just to see these massive vehicles just come out of the snow out of nowhere during the Battle of Hoth and just start decimating them. They had very little room to maneuver, yet their shields were strong enough to keep out the snow speeders from doing too much damage. Of course, they had a result to the tow cables, but just the massive power that they had to give off, and like all the blueprints and manufacturing that has to go into them. Now, kind of the structure of the AT-AT is, so you have the head, which is the cockpit basically, and the head is like the brain of it all. That is where the troopers are. That is where you can typically find the generals or the commanders. So the thick armor plating on the Imperial Walker is too heavy for effective repulsors. So you can't fly, but it has enough to keep its own ground and keep walking on. Now, if you didn't know that the body, as we kind of go on, you'll see the body of the AT-AT, how it's massive. That is actually where they keep all of their troopers who are waiting to commence an assault. Now, most AT-ATs can hold up to 40 troopers. That's just sitting down. You could probably fit another good 10 to 20 just standing around waiting. Not as safe, but you could if you really wanted to. Of course, they had 2 officers on board to kind of keep control and help out. They, of course, had fuel cells near the rear. Kind of the rear top end was the fuel cells, the harnesses, the pump to keep it going. And underneath that which you may not know is a speeder bike garage. They had specialized white speeder bikes, which you never saw in the movies, but that was like right underneath the fuel power. And that's where they house all of their speeder bikes so they can unload them, hop on them, and easily patrol the land. Now, the legs are probably one of the most impressive components that I've seen. You got shock absorbers that help not shake the AT-AT too much, piston drive pressures, flat piston drive, knee joint brakes, because you have to have something to stop that massive thing from just running off on you. And you could see how wide the foot pads were to evenly spread the massive weight of the AT-AT that it was giving off. It's insane. Now, in the commander's cockpit, or the head of the AT-AT, the Walker's heavily armored head serves as the cockpit for the two pilots, of course, like I talked about, and the vehicle commander. Typically a commander, never really an admiral because they control space battles. On the exterior, as you, of course, probably really remember if you watch the movies a lot, is the mounted vehicle's weapons system. Both pilots are fully qualified to perform all control functions. Normal practice, one serves as the driver while the other serves as the gunner. Firing controls at any time. And of course, because the commander is in charge, he tells them where to aim and where to fire. So the two pilots are guided by terrain sensors. So if you think about it, you're in these humongous AT-ATs at a good 30 to 50 feet up off the ground, and you can't really tell the terrain. You can, avoid trees or huge snowbanks, but they have sensors that kind of help them guide them along since they can't see. While the commander also has a periscope to see what's in front of him and get kind of more of a better view, the binoculars type. Now, deployed as weapons of terror was the original, the weapons of terror, which is definitely the reaction that the Empire got a lot because of these massive vehicles just traveling over any terrain. The gigantic Imperial all-terrain armored transport walkers advanced inexorably on the battlefield like unstoppable giants. There is very little you can do to stop these monstrosities. Like, their original intent was to create fear and havoc, and they have very little weaknesses. Of course, the legs may seem like a big one, but you wouldn't typically think of it off the top of your head. You wouldn't go for the legs. You try to blow it up as fast as you could. Most people just didn't realize it. So blaster bolts from ordinary turrets and cannons merely glance off the Walker's armor because it's so heavily fortified. Now, with some of the blaster bolts, some of them may bounce off, others may be taken in, kind of like a shock absorber, into the armor. So they are absorbed and they dissipate. Powerful reactor produces the raw energy needed to move this huge machine. Cannons in the movable cockpit spit death and salvage at heedless foes below, cutting a swath of destruction, which the mighty footpads then crash through. So the nice thing about the footpads, since they're so great and be able to disperse all that weight that they're holding, is they're able to crush anything, as you saw in the Battle of Hoth. So breaking enemy lines with the blaster fire and a lumbering mass, the Walker functions as a trooper carrier, like I mentioned earlier. They carry a good 40 snow troopers during the Battle of Hoth to kind of help them overtake the base. So their main function was to decimate everything in their path while having troops help back them up in the end. I mean, these walkers were built for destruction, pain, and agony, which is pretty bad, but you gotta look at the magnificent, I would definitely suggest checking out the entire, blueprint of the AT-AT, the massive, size that it had, and all of the detailing that had to go with it. It's 20, so the AT-AT, the lengths are 20 meters in length, the height is 22.5, and the maximum speed that can go is 60 kilometers per hour. Now, to put that in, of course, that was metric system. To put that in the U.S. standard system, So 20 meters is roughly 65.61 feet in length. And the height was 22.5 meters, which estimates out to about 70 feet tall. So it's a good 60 feet long and 70 feet tall. And they just destroyed everything in their path. It's crazy that they create so much destruction. Now 60 kilometers, about 37 miles per hour. Of course, there are a lot of vehicles today that can outrun it, but the huge lumbering mass and like all of the stress that has to be put onto it is difficult. Now, the manufacturer of the AT-AT Krutt Drive Yards, Imperial Department of Military Research, Imperial Robotics Construction Faculty ICE Station Beta. So there's a lot of different, I don't know the exact manufacturer of it, but there are so many that can manufacture these weapons. That's just devastating what they leave in their path. Now, kind of getting to the end of this video, I want to kind of review what I was talking about earlier with the scheduling. You can find this on my Facebook page, facebook.com/darthkitten77. I'll give you a heads up what's to come. So Mondays, I have Map Mondays. Take a tour of the maps and learn the different areas and bases while I try not to die. So basically take a tour of all the Star Wars worlds that they introduced into Battlefront so you can kind of compare it to the newer version that's coming out. Character Wednesday, all about the different strengths and weaknesses of the characters. So I did do a video earlier about this, about some of the characters. I believe it was Stormtrooper. I did one of the Clone Troopers. And just kind of learn about the characters in general and going into details. Strategy Friday, all about strategy of the different planets and the sides. So I've already done a couple that are mostly based with the Imperial side because I'm more favored towards that. But the clones can be very difficult for myself, I know, because the droidekas have that advantage of the shield generator. Then Vehicle Saturday, such as today, to talk all about the vehicles in Star Wars history and throughout the games. I'll mostly consist of ones that you're actually able to ride within the games. I will talk about some that you may not be able to ride, like if you're not able to control it or ride it, but it's like on that planet that you can find it on that planet. And then Sundays will be Battlefront Sundays, basically me just rambling on about the brand new Battlefront and brand new info that I know. So that's kind of the schedule I'm going to take because I don't have as much time as I thought I would to create all of these videos, but I'll still keep in touch. So thank you for liking, subscribing. If you got any questions or you just want to talk, you can find me on my Facebook page. I'll reply to you as soon as I can, or just post a comment below and I will get back to you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great night. May the Force be with you. I just gotta like to give a big shout out to DK Star Wars Character Encyclopedia and DK Star Wars Encyclopedia. I will get most of my information about the specific characters, drivers, or pilots, and the vehicle selection, especially for the DK Star Wars Incredible Cross Selection, the Classic Trilogy. I have both the Classic Trilogy and the prequel series blueprints books that I hope that I'll be able to introduce to you guys. Just want to give credit to that. So with that, may the Force be with you.